Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode, actually episode 20 of the Innovative Dad Facebook Live chats. And tonight we're going to be talking about what it means to be raising emotionally intelligent kids. It's a topic that we all hear about. It's a buzzword, but what does it mean? So we're going to dive first into what it means, and then we'll talk a little bit about, okay, well, if we can figure out what it means, what do we do to get it instilled in our kids so that this is a skill or an ability that they have? Emotional intelligence is differentiated from what we call general intelligence. General intelligence, or IQ, which is something that we hear a lot about, sort of our overall ability to work our way through the world. It's related to how we problem solve, and understand facts, and our overall fund of knowledge that we're working with, as well as a wide variety of other skills that go into making this larger idea of general intelligence. And the psychological community, of course, has lots of thoughts on what exactly that is, and is there one big thing, or is there lots of little things? So let's leave it at talking about intelligence is a pretty complicated topic, and we're going to set general intelligence, or IQ, on the side, at least for this Facebook chat. Maybe we'll make that a topic of a future Facebook Live session, talking about what intelligence really means. And we'll dive into emotional intelligence, which in some respects may be just as complicated as talking about IQ. So when we talk about emotional intelligence, we're talking about EQ. And what is it really? So the concept has its origins with the work of John Meyer at the University of New Hampshire and Yale professor Peter Solvley. They came up with this topic and the idea in the early 90s, but it really hit its big time with Daniel Goleman later on. And so Meyer's definition is that from a scientific standpoint, emotional intelligence is the ability to accurately perceive your own and others' emotions, to understand the signals that emotions send about relationships, and to manage your own and others' emotions. Okay? Right, it seems really simple. Now, Dan Goleman took that and broke it into 5 general components of emotional intelligence. There's self-awareness, knowing your own emotions; self-regulation, that is being able to regulate and control how we react to our emotions; internal motivation, that is having a sense of what's important in life; empathy, which is that idea of understanding the emotions of others; and then social skills, which is our ability to build social connections with our peers, our friends, and our acquaintances. So Goleman is really taking Meyer's definition and breaking it down into something that is a little bit more concrete, and that has become a little bit more of the standard definition, certainly given the impact that Goleman's work has had, not just outside of traditional psychological research, but in the mainstream as well as part of pop culture. So, let's talk a little bit about what does it mean to feel like emotional intelligence is actually doing its thing. So you can get a sense that your EQ is at work when you're feeling a sensitivity to the moods of others. And, if you are starting to sense that there is something going on beneath the surface for somebody else, that's another way that you're going to be seeing your emotional intelligence at work. So, if you understand that somebody's angry outburst is actually a plea for help, that person is showing a lot of emotional intelligence. Okay? It also shows up when we understand ourselves, when we show some skepticism about our emotions. So people with high EQ, with high emotional intelligence, are often unlikely to trust their first impulses, that first gut reaction they have to things. And that's important because if we take a little bit more time to interpret the situation and understand the emotional cues, sometimes that initial emotional reaction is not accurate. Also, having a higher emotional intelligence is those people that are going to be dealing with failure. Emotional intelligence is correlated with a higher level of resilience. So they're going to be more likely to take a look at that setback with resilience and not give up when that happens. All right, so that gives you a little bit of a taste of what the importance is of emotional intelligence. You can see why all of these things would be helpful for our kids, and wanting them to be able to negotiate not just the world that they live in now, but the adult world that they're going to be functioning in as well. So having that sense of self-awareness, self-regulation, internal motivation, empathy, and social skills, to kind of touch back on Goleman's definition, is really significantly important for our kids. All right, so let's talk about a variety of different strategies that you as a parent can use to start to encourage emotional intelligence in your kids. All right, we've got a whole bunch of them here. And it's not that I don't want you to think that this is yet another one of those checklists. These are different things that you can be doing. They don't all have to happen at once, and they don't need to be done in a specific order. They're all great ways of building these skills. And you're going to see a lot of similarity to things that I've talked about in terms of emotion coaching before. Because when you're doing emotion coaching, one of the things you are trying to do is build up that higher level of emotional intelligence. So let's start off with the first thing here. You should accept and acknowledge your child's emotions. And this is always really important. You know, you want to let your kids know that they can't choose their feelings. These feelings are going to happen naturally, but what they can do is choose what to do with their feelings. This is sort of separating feelings from behavior, which is really important. And you can do that by saying things, wow, well, that must have been really frustrating. Or you're showing me how angry you are right now. That's great. I can see how excited you are. Or it might be tough when your friends don't follow through on things. Hey, you look pretty upset. Something must have happened. What was it? Another great step to do is to help to take them label their emotions. And I will share in the comments section a post that I wrote recently on the blog that talks about helping to build kids' emotional vocabularies. But labeling emotions, you're upset, you look worried, you seem excited. These are all great ways of building that emotional vocabulary. And if you're thinking about emotional intelligence, being able to have that self-awareness and know your own emotions, having the words to connect to it is critical. Naturally, it makes sense. The next thing I'd be talking about is encouraging your kids to talk about their feelings. So you've identified the emotion, you're starting to be empathetic with them, you're giving them some vocabulary to work with, then you want to encourage them to pull them out. Your child may be having what you feel is a negative emotion, but stopping them from expressing their fear or their anger or their sadness isn't going to stop them from having those feelings, but it is going to cause them to repress them. And at the risk of getting a little bit psychodynamic or Freudian, repressed feelings are going to look for a way to get out, and they can pop out in unexpected ways when they slip out of sort of our conscious control. So when we do things to completely suppress or repress or distract our kids from expressing their feelings, and this comes into the, that's a little scratch that doesn't hurt, or, and telling our sons, our little boys, that they shouldn't be crying. You want to acknowledge, you want to empathize, you want to let them show you what happened. Give them a little bit of time to process. These are all things that are really important. And then they'll be ready to move on. But you want to give them this opportunity to be talking about their feelings. You want to work with your kids to help them recognize cues as to how other people may be feeling. And it's great. You can do this all the time. You can do this when you're walking through the grocery store, in the mall, in the car. You can do this when you're reading children's books and thinking, how did that make this particular character feel? What do you think's going on for this person right now? What would you feel like if this happened to you? And these are all great ways of getting them to sort of recognize those feelings in others. And again, going back to empathy being a critical part of emotional intelligence, and these are great ways of building empathy. And kids' storybooks, again, are a wonderful resource for this because they're chock full of emotional language and with motivations and things that are hidden from kids, and getting them to sort of dig a little bit more deeply into them. Next, you want to help kids be aware that when tension or stress is starting to build with them, and give them a sense of being able to identify what some of the things are that trigger stress for them. You may want to point out some of the physical signs. I can see that you're starting to clench your jaw. I can see that your fists are really nice and tight. What about is what's going on? Are you finding stressful? So you want to give them the opportunity to feel heard, reflect back on their feelings, and all this. You're seeing a lot of overlap here But it really is about getting kids to express their emotions and having that opportunity to do that and to better understand how their emotions are functioning. You know, obviously this is emotional intelligence. That's what we'll be doing it. So, you know, I think that piece of it is really critical. And then once you've helped them identify their sense of stressors, well, I mean, I hope it seems obvious now that the next thing it's going to do is to teach them how to calm themselves down. And we're going to, you know, do that through things like square breathing is a great technique. And as well as just, you know, any kind of self-soothing activity. If it's grabbing some kind of a lovey, any of those things that will work. And really just trying to get, you know, the tools into their repertoire that help them to soothe themselves. And it may be taking a break and walking away from a situation. Talking about, well, what would happen if you could say to yourself, I can stay calm? Making a commitment to talk about things later on, as well as a great way of getting them to calm down because they can feel that their emotions are not being swept aside. You're going to teach them alternate ways of expressing their frustration. If you've got a child that's expressing their frustration and hitting, you know, let's talk about how you could use your words to get what you want. And this really comes down to a lot of times the behaviors that we see with kids around emotional frustration is that they don't have the skill set in that moment. So that if we spend some time teaching it to them, they'll do much better. And then, of course, the next piece is teaching them problem-solving skills. You know, kids want to feel like they're in control. Difficult emotions make them feel like they're out of control, which causes reactions. And, you know, but it can create an opening for us to be able to talk about their emotions and to get them to engage in that problem solving. The goal is to get them to do this independently as adults eventually, but you can be there to support them, work with them with brainstorming. You know, and again, as I've talked about in emotion coaching, resist the urge to solve the problem for them and hand them the solution on a silver platter, because that's sending the message that you don't have any confidence in their skills, which is the exact opposite of what you want to be doing. So you can support them. You know, I'll help you write down strategies that might work, and then you pick what you want to do first. Asking them, what would you think questions, what do you think will happen, how do you think they'd respond to that, are all great ways of really starting to promote that. Really helpful is to teach your kids positive self-talk. I hear from a lot of negativity from a lot of kids. I can't do this, I won't do that, I'm no good at this. Getting kids to talk about themselves in a positive light. You know, I hate to bring up the cliche of the little engine that could, but I think I can, and using the power of positive thinking can go a long way. And you can tie that to as well encouraging a child to visualize what it is like to have successfully gotten through a difficult experience. You know, what are you going to feel like? What is it going to look like when this more difficult experience is over and I've shown my best effort? You know, it's important also to work to recognize what helps kids perform at their best. You know, what could you do at the beginning of the day to help you feel more positive throughout the day? You know, and pointing out, you know, how do they keep going? What are the things that they are doing? You know, are they planning some of the things advance? Are they looking for encouragement? Oh, you know, I really like how you respond to this. Those sorts of things. You know, as parents, we have the ability to sort of set the stage and help our kids by controlling a little bit of the environment. And I think that that's important. Talking to kids about how to listen and to talk in ways that enables them to resolve conflicts and negotiate win-win solutions is really important. And this is a great way of getting them some skills to deal with conflict. And so many of us as adults are conflict averse because we don't necessarily have the skills to be able to work out a solution that is going to be mutually beneficial. And we tend to think about it as either I'm going to win or they're going to win, or we're both going to lose. And you know, so talking about what are good solutions that can get you both what you need, or how could you explain that in a way that she understands what you're trying to say. Using iMessages as well is a great strategy. also. And, these are things that I think will really help resonate and get kids moving towards that higher level of emotional intelligence that we want them to have. So another great way, anything involving our own behavior and using us as the parent, as a teacher, is critical. So, you want to comment when our kids are showing self-control, and using that feedback. Commenting when you're showing some self-control as well is really great. I really like the way that you stay calm when you were doing that. Talk about our own feelings again. Use those I statements once again. I feel frustrated when you interrupt me. I get worried. Use these I statements to share what's going on inside your head, and show them how you are remaining calm and angry. Remember, our kids are going to see what they do and see how do we handle our own tantrums. Do we tantrum? And they are going to model our problem-solving skills and our emotional responses, which is really, really something to think about in terms of what's going on. And it may be, look, folks, we come home from work and we're exhausted, we're tired. The boss yelled at us, the employees yelled at us, something didn't go right, we lost a contract, something broke, we had to spend extra time, the commute was awful. I get it that we as parents are stressed, but if we can work on preventing our own anger from escalating and not getting sucked into a power struggle and a battle with our children, we're going to be showing them some incredibly valuable skills. And sometimes you may need to show them that you can't deal with something right now. Hey, I've had a rough day. Can we talk about this in a little bit? I don't like how you're talking to me right now, and I can't sit here and listen to this. Giving yourself a timeout, all of those things. Are really critical to just sort of thinking about how we're going to build up our kids' emotional intelligence. A piece of work that I like from Marisa Elias, who happens to have written 2 books on emotionally intelligent parenting and been an advisor of mine as an undergraduate, is that in one of his books he wrote about what he called the 24-karat golden rule. So the golden rule is do unto others that you'd have them do unto you. The 24-karat golden rule is that we should always think about the impact of our actions on our kids and be as particular in what we do with our kids as we would want others to be with our kids. So if you're behaving in a way towards your child that you would never want another adult to be doing to your kid, why are you doing that? And if we think about that in terms of our own parenting behavior, that's really going to help us build up those emotional intelligence skills in a really critical and engaging way, which I think is important. Now, I do want to touch a little bit on, before we go today, what to do when things are really hot in the moment. And, what are some things to do? So I want to give you a handful of steps that you can use as well for when things are just difficult and you want to react. So one thing to do is to think about what are the needs and feelings that are going on behind the problem behavior. Your kids want to have warm, happy, fuzzy interactions, and their misbehavior is usually coming from some kind of feeling of being overwhelmed. So you want to figure out what's underlying and address those. It could be a need for connection. It could be a sense of control that they need to feel. It could be something biological, hunger, sleep. And remembering that our kids are not great at articulating their needs, but if we can help them tune into it, they will then get better at understanding their own bodies and their own emotions and how they're reacting it. Okay, so the next thing is, as I mentioned before, you want to accept all emotions, even as you're going and stepping in as a parent to limit behavior. Again, emotions good, some behaviors not so good. You're setting limits. This is not acceptable. We do not hit in our family. They need to be able to talk to us about their emotions, and using our empathy and helping them work through the emotional storm is great. So you want to make sure that you're staying near your child, that you're connecting, that you're using your soothing voice, that you're helping them feel that they're safe, and keep them tethered to you during this rather than sending them off. When we allow ourselves to feel an emotion, it's going to go ahead and dissipate. Remember, I talked about not wanting to repress. So when you're in the moment, again, you've got to give that message that emotions are all okay. Behaviors aren't always. But if kids can start to regulate their emotions, they can start to regulate their behavior as well. All right, next. I think I've said this a million times. I'll probably say it a million more times in these talks and the counseling work that I do outside of these Facebook Lives. But you got to regulate your own emotions. And if you're empty, if you're dealing with your own sense of being hangry, you're going to have a harder time keeping calm. Your job is not to fix your child's emotions, it's to accept them and to maintain your equilibrium. And your kids are going to be learning to calm and soothe themselves in response to your own self-regulation skills. When we're setting those limits with a sense of what's going on in the child's perspective, then they might be less likely to resist those limits. All right, another step is, when your child is being angry, you got to make sure that you're not interpreting that as being rude. They've got a series of vulnerable emotions that they're struggling with. And anger is a great defense against some of these deeper emotions like fear, hurt, and sadness. Don't get distracted when they drop the hate bomb on you. They're trying to protect themselves, and you just want to use some reflective language around it, and start to call out those emotions that you're seeing to get behind that the behavior of saying, "Hey, I hate you, I hate you." We don't want to get frightened of our kids' anger. We want to, help them sort of work through it. When kid is, tantruming because they want something, and just recognize that, and you're not going to be able to give it to them. Now, like, I'm sorry, I can't give you this, whatever it is. We can't have ice cream for dessert because there's no ice cream in the house. Talk to your child about it. But when that wish can't be granted, use a little bit of humor, use a little bit of virtual wish fulfillment. I know you really would like to have ice cream, and I bet you if I gave you ice cream, you would eat 6 bowls of ice cream. Now, wouldn't that be amazing to be able to eat 6 bowls of ice cream? And then they're sitting there looking at you going, yes, I want 6 bowls of ice cream. But then you got to look and see what, again, is that deeper need, and okay, well, maybe you're a little hungry and it's almost time for dinner, but you can't wait. So let me give you something else that you can have right now, a healthy snack. And we all have desires that can't be met right away. And building emotional intelligence means that we're learning how to deal with those desires that need to be put off or aren't that appropriate. The last thing, of course, is, please, 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 when this is going on and your kid is in the moment, don't take it personally. Don't lean in and escalate. Getting into a power struggle, you're not going to win. Our job is to calm down that emotional storm, not throw additional fuel onto it. Otherwise, the kids aren't going to learn how to do it either. And you're showing your child that you love them, and that you've got this sense of emotional generosity when you're not moving in and escalating. So those are some strategies really to deal with kids' behavior in the moment when you really want to be working towards building their emotional intelligence. And the neat thing is something to be aware of, is that as you're working to build your child's emotional intelligence, you really are working on your own as well. This is a skill that is something that can continue to grow. It's not something that is static, and it is something that's much more coming from a growth mindset perspective. So that's a little bit on emotional intelligence and what we as parents can do to promote it and get it to thrive within our own children. And it really is a critical, vital life skill, I think, that we all want our kids to have. So That's our topic for tonight. We'll be back in a few weeks with another Facebook Live. In the meantime, stay tuned to my account Instagram for parenting strategies to build kids' habits, and follow that series there of 1-minute videos of great strategies that can help you transform slowly your children's behavior at home and give you a healthier, happier, more successful home environment. As well as post on the blog. So you can find the blog at www.ariyaris.com. The Instagram account is @ariyaris, and you can follow me on Twitter at enoparent as well. I am there also. And if you happen to be in the Washington, D.C. metro area, check out on the website. There are some workshops that I'm offering in person, and you can have the opportunity to work with me on a variety of different skills that will help make you a more innovative parent in the future. So once again, thank you for joining me this evening. I wish you a good night and happy parenting.